It's quite a privilege to be following Mark Benioff and the Dreamforce 14 keynote. We think we have some exciting stuff for you as well with our session entitled Introducing MavensMate Salesforce 1 IDE for the Atom text editor. So is everybody enjoying Dreamforce thus far? All right, awesome. So my name is Joe Ferraro. I'm the CTO of Mavens Consulting. This is my 8th Dreamforce, and it's extremely exciting to be presenting. This is the second year we're presenting, or third year we're presenting MavensMate, and we got some exciting new features to show to you today. And I have with me my esteemed colleague, David Helmer.
Yeah, and I'm also a technical architect at Mavens Consulting, and this is my first Dreamforce ever, so I'm pretty excited.
You look really excited, actually. Okay, and who is Mavens? If you're not familiar with us, we are the preferred life sciences implementation partner for Salesforce.com and Viva. We have about 50 consultants located across North America and Europe. And just this year, we have 11 Mavens in attendance, speaking on 9 different technical sessions. So we're pretty proud of that. And if you want to follow our activity this year at Dreamforce, you can follow the hashtag MavensDF14. So let's talk a little bit about MavensMate. So who's using MavensMate now for development? Okay, good. So there are people who don't know what it is. So these slides will hopefully be relevant to you. So to level set on what MavensMate is, it refers to collectively a tool for building Salesforce 1 apps. So the flagship plugin today is the one for Sublime Text. It's the one that most are using if they're using MavensMate. But this is an open source project, and our mission really is to make building these applications in Salesforce 1 easy and fun, regardless of your platform or text editor. I think that's important. And in order to kind of level set, to see kind of the history of MavensMate and where we're going with it, let's kind of go back to 2011. And the impetus really was to kind of open our eyes and be able to build Salesforce apps outside of the confines of Eclipse. If you like Eclipse, great. Personally, I wasn't a fan of it, so I was really, at the time, excited about a text editor called TextMate, which maybe not many people use anymore. But I had a bunch of Ruby scripts that were deploying to Salesforce that allowed me to build my apps inside of TextMate. That became the TextMate plugin. And then Sublime Text came along, and it was really popular with developers. It was fast, it was easy to use, it had a really good foundation. Community contribution for packages was fantastic. And I decided to rewrite all those file system integrations and Salesforce API integrations in Python, which was the plugin language for Sublime Text. Then I realized that it would be really foolish of me to continue to write all of these integrations to the file system and Salesforce.com APIs every time a new hip text editor came out, because it happens now increasingly more often. So I kind of dedicated last year to rewriting all of that stuff to be a platform agnostic executable. So it can be used to quickly build plugins for future text editors. And so 2014 came around, and we saw the emergence of Atom. And we're really excited about Atom. We're going to talk to you a little bit about Atom. But it just opened up the possibilities for the types of things we can do with MavensMate, and making the developer experience even better. But before I go on, I just want to give a shout out to some collaborators. So I told you around 2012 we had built the Sublime Text plugin, and actually it was just me at the time. And it got to be a little bit more popular than I expected, and there was a lot of issues coming in from GitHub, and it was very difficult to keep up with them all. So I do appreciate the help from the collaborators that are up on this screen here, David Helmer being one of them, but Kyle Thornton, Justin Silver, and Ralph Calloway as well. So just keep these guys in mind when you're using MavensMate. It's completely free, open source, 100% volunteer. So I have to thank those guys. So real quickly, the state of MavensMate. So we have this open source tool for building Salesforce 1 IDEs. Keeps getting better as the APIs keep getting better from Salesforce, the tooling API, the metadata API. The underlying core MM is written in Python, and it's frozen, so it can be used across platform now. And again, it allows developers to build these apps in their favorite text editors. So that platform agnostic architecture is really important to the Atom, the development of Atom, because it really accelerated the development time. So we didn't have to rewrite all those integrations like I'd mentioned. We could focus on the UI and the UX for the developer when they're building applications inside these various text editors. So Sublime Text, Atom, and then even if you want to use it in the command line, which we're doing in certain areas at Mavens. And so going back to why we're so excited about Atom, this graphic's a little extreme because Sublime Text is quite good. But really what we're trying to get across here is that over the last 5-10 years, we're seeing some great gains in the areas of text editors, some really great features that are coming out, and more coming out every day. But what we've seen very recently is that there's been a reliance upon modern web technologies for building these applications. So an example is Brackets, which is an open source project from Adobe, and also Atom, which is backed by GitHub. So David's going to come up and talk a little bit about why we're so excited about Atom specifically. So Adam, or David, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Joe. To understand why Atom is so amazing, we should talk about where it came from. Okay, so it's from the staff at GitHub. And who here doesn't know what GitHub is or is not too familiar with it? Okay, so everyone is familiar with GitHub.
I think that's the right answer.
Yes. Thank you for being aware of source control. Yeah, so, well, as you probably know, GitHub has open source and the web at the foundation of their company. And this is relevant because this has clearly driven the development philosophy of Atom. And so GitHub describes Atom as a hackable text editor for the 21st century. This statement is at the center of why we brought MavensMate to Atom. It's a hackable text editor that allows us to add features that go well beyond what is possible with less flexible text editors. And so anytime that you've seen a MavensMate UI, especially for MavensMate for Sublime Text, all of that UI is actually being done outside of the Sublime Text UI. So how is it hackable? Well, it's born from the web and easy to hack. This is an important statement. The entire editor is built on Chromium. If you don't know what Chromium is, it's a web framework that Google has built. And other projects built on Chromium include the Google Chrome OS and a little-known browser called Google Chrome. This means that at the core of Atom are easy-to-develop web technologies like HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript, and I really hope that most of you are familiar with those technologies. So, don't worry, MavensMate Sublime Text users. The transition to Atom is also really, really, really easy. Sublime Text and Atom are very similar in a lot of ways, actually. They have almost the same keystrokes. They have very similar layout, workflows port over really, really easily. And they both have wonderful package repositories. And Atom's package repository is going to have one of my favorite packages, MavensMate.
So we know what you're thinking, because David and Kyle were thinking the same thing when I came to them, was like, hey, we need to build MavensMate for Atom, another new text editor. So bear with us. It's really all about the developer experience. The reason we're bringing MavensMate to Atom is because it gives us the ability to do a lot of things that we couldn't do in Sublime Text, make the developer experience more streamlined. So let's talk a little bit about what's so different about it. So David talked about the fact that it's an entirely hackable Chrome. It's built on web technologies. So what that means for us is we can kind of go beyond what we've done with Sublime Text. We can put buttons where we want to put them. We can make the developer experience more intuitive and make it feel more like a native application. So you'll see the new errors view, the new status panel, and the embedded MavensMate dialogues are an example of that. So we have a fully contained experience now for Linux and Windows users. You're probably familiar with having to go outside of MavensMate for interaction with the UIs. That's no longer a requirement. That's all embedded inside of Atom. And it just creates a streamlined experience for developers. We're also able to take the buffer itself and hack that as well. So the buffer where the code resides, an example of that is what we are referring to as code helpers. So we have some really great ideas for this feature, but what you'll see today in the first version is bringing documentation into the editor. So if there's an Apex method, class, technique that requires a little bit more thought, especially for newer developers, if you're not familiar with some of this stuff, we can highlight that area and give them some information about it, provide some helpful links, etc. The live Visual Force preview, which you'll see today. So because Atom is a browser, we can do some cool things like bring in an iframe of Salesforce directly into Atom and allow you to preview changes to CSS, controller changes, markup revisions, whatever, when you're developing your Visual Force page. And this is an exciting one. I mean, this is something that Developer Console has been using that we haven't been able to take advantage of in Sublime Text. But because, again, that we're dealing with a browser, essentially, we've set up MavensMate to be a streaming API client. So what that means is when a new debug log comes in, then it can be streamed directly to the editor without you having to go and fetch those logs, use those precious API hits. And then last but not least, something we're really excited about is this concept of remote real-time pair programming. So again, we're using web technologies, Node.js, Firebase, and we're bringing Google Doc-like collaboration to MavensMate, which we'll show you here in a minute. So if you have an issue with an Apex class, a Visual Force page, you want to share that session, you can do that. All right, so let's see a demo. So to set the scene a little bit, let's talk about our startup company, Shufflebean, which you may have seen if you're at our session yesterday. But like any good, cool, hip startup, they have a great, cool, hip name. They have the hip offices in San Francisco, and of course they have lots of ping pong tables, because that's what you do when you're a startup, right? So those got to be quite popular, and there's lots of games going on, and it's really difficult for them to track all the matches. So in order to do so, they decided they need to create an application on Salesforce, which is the most appropriate platform to build applications that track ping pong matches. And so we want to show you that right now. So David's going to come up here and do that. So go ahead, David.
All right, well, let's have a quick look at the application itself. So we have a really basic data model here. Ping pong matches really don't have that many complicated parts to them. We have players, so you can actually see that we have a few players here. When you look at a player, we have a player name, player image, we have the points that they're involved in and the matches that they're involved in. And you can see that you can also look at matches, and they have a few custom fields like player points and the total points and who's serving. Really basic things that keep track of one of the best sports on earth. And to sort of bring this all together and make it easy to track games, we have a Apex page, of course, that's going to be keeping track of them. And so you can see it keeps track of each game. We can sort of review all the matches going on. We can see some in-progress matches. Yeah. And
that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
So let's see some of the code behind the app.
All right, let's open up Atom. Okay.
So let's go ahead and create a new project. So you'll notice that the command palette looks a lot like Sublime Text. And the first thing you'll notice here is that that UI that you would typically open externally is now embedded directly into Atom as an iframe in a modal. So it's the same UIs, and again, what's nice about it is because we didn't have to rewrite the core, we're able to just display that same UI that you're familiar with inside of the editor. All right, so let's grab all of those objects.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So, great.
So let's create the project. All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay. So let's open up some metadata. So the other thing you'll notice here is the project structure is going to be the exact same. So we have our source directory, we have our config directory. Everything will look very familiar to you from Sublime Text. So the first thing you'll notice here is, or first thing I want to call out is this concept of code helpers. So go ahead and click on the without sharing, David. So you'll see that we've picked out a couple things, a handful of things that we want to call out to developers when they're working in Atom that may require a little bit more thought. And so without sharing as an example, we have our add future annotation that is going to provide us a link to the documentation. So if you go ahead and click that, that'll take you to the Salesforce documentation. And we have some great ideas for where we want to take this functionality. So from being able to call out pieces of the buffer inside Atom as a project team. So something you don't have to share to everybody who's using MavensMate, but if there's something that you want to share to your fellow developers inside of the app and have that be project specific that you can share, that we want to do that. It's also fantastic for newer developers. So you're ramping a developer on Force.com platform, Salesforce 1, then you can turn this functionality on and allow them to kind of get a little bit of context when they jump into a file that maybe they didn't create. All right, so why don't we go ahead and let's compile a file just to show that the process for compilation is very similar as well.
All right, well, let me just put a little, let's see what I want to get.
Put a little debug statement in there?
All right, a little bug the matches, yeah.
Okay,
right.
So you'll see also we have the panel down below now, which is been tweaked a little bit. It's got better color coding. It's going to act much more like a terminal. You're going to be able to see raw responses from Salesforce, the APIs, if you need them to debug, or if the message that we're giving you is not enough, you can see the raw responses. So you can see here, looks like you have a bad variable reference there, so you might want to fix that.
Oh. Well, let me just see, looking at the error.
Okay, so this is another area we wanted to call out. So this is a really raw version of the errors view, but what we want to call out here is that when you have, for example, a compilation of a project or another operation that would potentially spit out multiple errors, we want you to be able to see those comprehensively and handle them on an individual basis. So here's an example where we're showing the ability to provide seed text for a Google search, for example, based on the error. So a little variable does not exist. It's being searched in Google here. Yeah. And we have ideas to bring that to Stack Exchange and other sources of information, potentially even bringing them directly into this view to help people quickly for more basic issues. Right. So it looks like you got line 88, or is that 88? Yeah.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and fix that. So you'll see we'll highlight the error just like you've seen in many other IDEs.
Right.
So let's compile that, and hopefully that'll be a success. Okay, perfect.
Great.
So the next thing we want to do is let's actually go through the unit testing and logging process as well. So one of the commands you'll see in Atom is start logging. So this tells MavensMate to tell Salesforce to set up traces for the debug users that you have set up in config.debug, if you're familiar with that file. So you can see here that we've started logging for one user, and logging, again, can be configured in the .debug file. So let's go ahead and run over to the unit test.
Let's run some tests.
Okay, so we're going to run the run test command. It's a mouthful. And you'll see here that in the middle here, we have a notification that a new debug log has come in. So again, this is an example of the streaming API, streaming directly to Atom. So you can go ahead and open that log. And you'll see also in the terminal below, we have some information about the test. So we have our stack trace down below saying 1 of 2 tests passed. And then if you're familiar with the log view inside of Sublime Text, this is very similar where we highlight fatal errors, exceptions, system debug statements. So why don't you, it looks like we have a failed assertion there, so why don't you fix that?
I noticed some exception here. Oh, okay, insert failed. Oh, required field missing. Oh, I think I know what field that is. All right, well, it must be back in the match controller. Just gonna fix this. I think that putting something
Okay.
right here would.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to compile that and rerun the test, and hopefully everything should be good with our match controller.
Great.
Perfect. So let's run that test again. Awesome. Okay, everything's passing now.
All right.
All right, so let's switch back to the Visualforce page and let's work on that one a little bit.
Oh, okay. So let's have a look at it.
So if you remember, we have our Visualforce page that's going to track all of our matches, and we can select a match.
Yeah, let's. Sorry. All right, so we'll look at this match where Sassy's playing, and Sassy, of course, is going to do really well. We're going to give Sassy a point. And,
okay, it's not updating the score there in the top, though.
Yeah, I updated the table, but not there. I'm betting that I didn't tell it to re-render the details. Okay.
All right.
Oh, well, let me go.
So let's fix that re-render.
Let's
now,
okay.
Now, why don't you open the live preview?
Oh, okay, so I don't have to switch back and forth? Yeah,
so this is an example of being able to bring the Salesforce.com UI directly into Atom. So we're doing the live preview of a Visualforce page here, side by side with our file inside of MavensMate. So you can tweak that re-render there.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and I think that there's another re-render that I should update.
What, you can't read that down there, David?
I can read it up there.
All right, so fix that re-render and go ahead and compile.
Yeah, let's see if that works.
So once the compilation is complete, you'll see on the right side of your screen that the Visualforce page will refresh. So that's always looking for the compilation event. And so let's go ahead and just verify that's working now with the re-render.
Okay.
So let's switch on that. Perfect. Okay, so now it's re-rendering. But
great, that works.
I still think the page kind of looks bad.
Yeah, it works, but it doesn't really make me happy.
We need to throw some pizzazz in there. So
all right, let's pizzazz.
You mentioned before that there's player images URLs stored.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could help me out with that.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead and share your MavensMate session?
Okay. All right, cool.
So David just ran the share session command. So this is an example of the real-time pair programming. So it's very similar to the concept of GoToMeeting, where you would share an ID and you would jump on that meeting ID. So he's shared that session ID with me, and I can join the session from my side. So I'll go ahead and run the join session command. And what I see when I open up my MavensMate and I join the session is David's file. So what we can see here, David, looks like we need to add some images. So maybe, what do you think about underneath the H2?
Yeah.
So what we can do here is add an image. Let's see. I'm not sure what that, okay, active match, player 1. And then the field was called player image?
Yeah.
Okay.
Underscore image. Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and do that. Maybe here.
I think player 2 should also have an image.
Let's do that.
Oh.
Okay. Is that right, or does that look right to you?
Yeah, that looks.
All right. Let's go ahead and compile it.
All right. Let me save it.
Yep. Nice. That looks really good.
Actually, Joe, I think that you're gonna have to fix something.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I got to fix there.
How about you?
So, sorry about that, David. Why don't you compile that again? We have duplicate images.
No one can play themselves.
No, that's true. Butt Tugly is pretty good looking, though.
All right,
there we go. All
All
right, let's take a look at some of our players.
right.
That looks a lot better.
All right, we got. All right.
Luis Suarez. Okay.
We got
That's nice.
Sad Gerard.
Sad Gerard. That looks like you.
Oh, that looks like me. All right.
But you know what? It's hard to differentiate between the two.
Yeah,
so
who's player 1, who's player 2?
I'm going to go ahead and add the... Maybe just... Is red okay?
Yeah,
okay with red?
I'll do blue down here for
Okay,
player 2.
go ahead and compile that.
Cool.
I think this is going to be a lot easier to read.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That looks
perfect.
a lot better.
Okay. Festive.
So voila. So that was an example of the real-time pair program that we talked about. So there's a lot of use cases here, and actually we have a lot of ideas for the way to make this process even better. But internally, we're using it to ramp new developers, get them up to speed on proper syntax usage, indentation, all that great stuff. And it's just it's a great way to learn and to get a second eye on something as well. So let's go ahead and switch back.
Oh.
Not to the beginning.
Not to the beginning.
So what we've just showed you is all the latest version of MavensMate for Atom. And next week, we will actually be introducing the first version that you guys can pick up and use. So that'll be an alpha version where you guys can start using that immediately and start posting tickets. If you're interested in looking at the project in advance of next week, you can see it on GitHub in the MavensMate Atom project. And for MavensMate in general, if you're interested, you can go to mavensmate.com. So that's all we have for you today. Are there any questions before we adjourn? Sure. Can you come up to the microphone? Thanks.
Is there any facility to import the Eclipse Salesforce.com IDE projects to start using in MavensMate?
Yeah, so you should be able to do that the same way you're able to do. Are you a Sublime Text user or no?
No.
Okay.
Just
So we do have a command for creating a. So from the beginning, I've always tried to align the project structure as closely to the IDE as possible. So we have a source directory with metadata and package.xml. And so you should be able to use that with your version control. And there's actually a command to create a MavensMate project from a project in that structure. It'll create the config directory and do all the configuration for you. Anything else? Yep.
Quick question on the paired programming.
Speaking of the mic.
The paired programming. So, is it only work between on a local network, or is it?
No.
Oh, so it goes across the WAN.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Does it only work local network? The answer is no. We just happen to be on the same Wi-Fi network, but it works.
So I was curious. So
no.
It's only over Bluetooth.
Yeah. We're supporting Bluetooth and V1.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Does the editor actually connect with GitHub with team development?
It's a great question. So the question is, does the editor actually integrate with GitHub for team development? And so I think Atom itself has a lot of plans. Right now they're focused on actually fixing the core or making sure the core is ready for the first release. But as soon as APIs are starting to become available for doing tighter integrations with GitHub, we're going to take advantage of those as well.
Do you find that you've had to change your workflow to do annotations and documentation in the editor?
In what way? Change the workflow in what way?
I guess I just find that it's super helpful for beginners, but our senior developers really going in there and making notes on the class they picked or the method or, okay.
Yeah, so the answer is what we're trying to do is we don't want to be intrusive to the developer whatsoever. So that's going to be a totally optional feature. But there was a comment yesterday, and we had showed a similar feature. Actually, we showed this feature where if we want to engage with something in the buffer, can we have a right-click action? And yes, we're kind of looking at those experiences to make it, for the advanced developers, they can kind of get information as they need it on demand.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the price policy for MavensMate? Is it free? Is it not
free?
It's awesome.
It's open source.
And I mean, it's wonderful. Thank you.
Free as in beer, free as in thought. Yeah.
Peter, what's up, man?
Are the Sublime Text, if you're going in a folder and you're running Atom, can you run them both at the same time, or do you need to kind of have a separate place where you've got the Atom project?
No, you can use the same workspace.
Yeah.
We're doing this right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of feature, feature level, Sublime Text versus Atom, where do you feel you're at in terms of?
So any of the fancy UI stuff is going to be limited to Atom. It will be ported to Sublime Text when we get those capabilities. But right now, the nature of the way Atom is architected allows us to modify it just like a browser. Whereas Sublime Text, it sacrifices that customization, but it's 10 times faster in terms of being able to open files and things like that. The compilation times to Salesforce are the same. They're not going to be any different. But you're just going to get a fancier UI and UX in Atom than you are in Sublime Text. So there's a trade-off, right?
Hi. Is it possible to deploy it to a different sandbox?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's available in Sublime Text as well. Yeah. So there's a command called deploy to server.
Okay, and is it possible to do a pre-deploy rule check or a post-deploy rule check?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. One more.
If you were starting a new project today, would you use the Sublime Text plugin or would you use Atom, personally?
I would still use Sublime Text.
Yeah.
It's just right now it's a lot faster, and also with Atom the APIs are changing on a monthly basis right now. Not our APIs, but theirs. So there could be something that we don't foresee. But I mean we've been using Atom for the last 2-3 months.
Yeah.
So I mean it's stable enough to use in production for sure. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thanks.